Can't fly and be green. I've always said that, and this might offend some of you, but so be it. The facts are you simply cannot be green and then board an airplane. Does that mean you shouldn't fly? Well, if you're claiming green street cred, you just can't. The amount of CO2 by an airline is just immense. And if you don't like CO2, you can't get on the air. You just can't fly. So let's talk about the air today. A great article in the Guardian, which is not known for its free market, right-wing credibility, that's for sure. But I want to share it with you because this is a cause to me that is very, very interesting. I'm a big advocate of locality, trying to limit pollution. Certainly, I believe in composting. Certainly, I believe in using your resources as God allowed you to and not wasting God's good gift to us of the planet. With that said, if you are one of those people that says, I have electric vehicles and you're taking your Tesla to the airport to get on a trip so you can have a meeting in London, your priorities are whacked. There's no other way around that. So let's talk about this because it's of interest to me and it might not be of interest to you, but then you can skip on and go to other things. But this is, here's George Monbiot, and I'm not even sure if I'm saying his last name right, but from The Guardian. Well, economic growth continues will never kick our fossil fuel habit. I tell you, could not agree more. It doesn't mean I don't believe in economic growth, but the facts are, if we're going to continue to grow, we're going to continue to consume, and photovoltaic and wind turbines aren't going to do the job. They're just not. So, I have a guy emailing me about the vampire electricity, how, even 2 watts to save is worth it. Man, it's not. It just isn't. Not when you're hopping on a plane. So let's talk about that here. We're getting there, aren't we? We're making the transition towards an all-electric future. We can now leave fossil fuels in the ground and thwart climate breakdown, or so you might imagine if you follow the technology news. Exactly. So how come oil production for the first time in history is about to hit 100 million barrels a day? How come the oil industry expects demand to climb into the 30s? Why have investments in Canadian tar sands, the dirtiest source of oil, doubled in a year? The answer is growth. There may be more electric vehicles on the world's roads, but there are more internal combustion engines as well. There may be good bicycles, but there are more planes. It doesn't matter how many good things we do. Preventing climate breakdown means ceasing to do bad things. Given that economic growth in nations that are already rich enough to meet the needs of all requires an increase in pointless consumption, it is hard to see how it can ever be decoupled from the assault on the living planet. When a low-carbon industry expands within a growing economy, the money it generates stimulates high-carbon industry. Anyone who works in this field knows environmental entrepreneurs, eco-consultants, and green business managers who use their earnings to pay for holidays in distant parts of the world and the flights required to get there. Hypocrisy drives me crazy. Trust me, I'm a hypocrite too. I get it without question. I do like to point out though, I love to point this out, and I'll just share with an example. Morningstar, the investment gurus of all, for mutual fund analysis and ETFs and whatnot, they had this green conference in Chicago. I think it's actually this month, October 2018, and all these people are flying in from all over the world to show their street cred on their green consciousness and green consciousness arising or what awareness, consciousness awareness. There's another firm I can't remember out of Boston, and they were doing something where all these people flying into Boston to do the green consciousness raising. Oh man, it's embarrassing. There's no other way around that. Electric vehicles have driven a new resource rush, particularly for lithium, that is already polluting rivers and trashing precious wild places. Clean growth is as much as an oxymoron as clean coal, but making this obvious statement in public life is treated as political suicide. The Labour, this is UK, new environmental policy published this week, rightly argues that our economic model is threatening the foundations of human well-being. It recognizes that ecological collapse cannot be prevented through consumer choice or corporate responsibility. And that's where it starts getting scary. Ecological collapse cannot be prevented by consumer choice or corporate social responsibility. Yeah, what does that tell you? They're going to dictate how you live your life. The response to our greatest predicament must be determined by scientific research, of course, and plan coordinated, led by the government. If that doesn't scare you, my friends, I don't know what does. That scares the heck out of me, because always the people who plan and coordinate are never the ones who deal with what they leave behind. They just don't. You think that the bigwigs and what is that, Downing Street, I don't even know what's called in the UK, or Washington, D.C. are not going to fly all over the world to a conference where they got to show their street cred? Nah, it's going to happen, but yet you're going to be stuck holding that wet bag. And it's always the way it will be forever. Anytime it comes from top down, the top always get benefits and the bottom always suffer. That you can see it right here. It recognizes that ecological collapse cannot be prevented through consumer choice. The response to our greatest predicament must be determined by scientific research and plan coordination led by the government. It pledges and whatever. Beyond a certain point, economic growth, a force that lifted us people out of poverty and cured deprivation, squalor, and disease, tips us back into those conditions. To judge by the devastation climate breakdown is wrecking, we appear already to have reached the point. And I just argue with this guy, then why stop? If we already reached it, but they've been saying this for 30 years. James Hansen in the Senate in June of 1988, his 30 years time's up. And we're still here. I mean, it's just the idea that these doomsday scenarios, the whole point about this is the same thing with the investment industry, saying you're going to be doomed if you don't invest more with me, of course, and make me rich. The same thing is on the green guys. You're going to be doomed if you don't do something, of course, and make the government mandated and make them rich. The contradiction is most obvious when the policy documents discusses airports. Labor guarantees that any airport expansion must adhere to its tests on climate change, but airport expansion isn't incompatible with its climate commitments. Even if airport emissions are capped at 2005 levels, by 2050, they will account for half of the nation's carbon budget. If airports grow, they will swallow even more of the budget. Airport expansion is highly regressive, offending the principles of justice and equity that labor exists to uphold. Regardless of the availability and cost of flights, they're used disproportionately by the rich, as these people are the people of the business meetings in New York, the second homes in Tuscany, the money to pay for winter holidays in the sun. Yet the impacts, noise, pollution, climate breakdown are visited disproportionately on the poor. All right, so that's all I just want to, I'm going to stop there, and you can read this from this guy here, and I'll put the link in the show notes. I probably disagree with this on 95%, because I don't want the government dictating anything, frankly. Just going back to things on smoking, the things on how I live my life, I don't want them telling me how to live. I just don't. They can suggest, that's fine. But at the end of the day, as an individual and an expectant lover of individual liberty, individual rights, you have the right to control yourself without question. That's what it comes down to. And as a human being who realizes that we all are created in the image of God, individually unique people, you can't have a top-down society. You can't. It's got to be bottom up, where we unite as unique creatures, species, to the benefit of each other. And when you look at the bottom up versus the top down, the bottom up works absolutely it does. Not all the time. There's always a one-off. But when I see this kind of stuff, I actually applaud George. He's kind of extreme, but I applaud him for actually stating the obvious. If you want to have a low carbon society, you've got to reduce your consumption. There's just no two ways around that, my friends. And why do I talk about this? Because until I see the advocates of the low carbon society reducing their consumption, I just pay no mind to them. I just don't. It's like the minister who's telling about how I got to live so morally to go to heaven, and yet he's out there philandering. The hypocrisy, you're going to lose people. And as a Christian, let me tell you, who do you think's driven more people out of the church? Was it, I don't know, what's that guy's name? Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris? Or was it the church? Look what's going on in the Catholic Church right now. In fact, I got my Boston College shirt on right now. Look what's happening right now. It's not the Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris's. It's the church itself, and this is just a Catholic church. The same thing goes for any kind of non-denominational or Protestant church as well. It's a church that drives people away because people see the hypocrisy, and they don't want to follow that if you're going to be a hypocrite from the top. And we can see that here with the greens too. It says, I want to live green, but yet I'm going to consume. You can't do that. You can't. It's simply you can't. And so the next time you're going to go on a plane, I'd simply say, are you going on a plane as you're someone with the green credentials? Because those two things are inherently mutually exclusive. You can't. Next time you go on a jet ski, the next time you take a cruise. Now, George didn't talk about cruises, but again, all these things put CO2. And look, the funny thing is when I'm growing indoor plants, no, I don't grow dope. I mean, if you want, I don't, but everyone says, oh, you must be growing dope. No, I do grow indoor plants. What do you want to do? Why do you think singing to your plants is a theory to help your plants grow? Because you're putting CO2. Breathing in oxygen, breathing out CO2. So singing to your plants generates CO2. And the theory is that not CO2, but singing to your plants will make your plants grow. It's not because your voice is so wonderful like Aretha Franklin. It's because you're breathing on them and you're breathing out CO2 and your plants love CO2. I'm a fan of CO2. I don't buy it for 2 seconds flat that CO2 is going to kill us all. I just don't. You might, that's fine. I don't. But at the end of the day, if you do and you're flying on that plane, you got to make a decision there because neither those two things cannot meet in the middle. One thing has got to give. And so anyway, I always like to give a little commentary on things on occasion because I think it's, for me, it's fun. I like doing it. I like to read and I actually like the other point of view, especially when I can see what they're trying to accomplish. And George here is he's trying to hold his side accountable, saying you can't be taking those second trips to Tuscany. You can't be having that beach house in I don't even know where the rich people go. What's the place? Monte Carlo or something? No, I don't even know what it's called. You can't and turn around and be green. You just can't. You can't have those two things. They're mutually exclusive. So as always, if you like the channel, don't forget to subscribe down below. We do talk about financial planning a lot here too, but every now and again, I'll see something that spikes my attention and I'll share it with you. All right. We'll see you guys next time.